Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Peter and this is a part 1 video of a small series in which I'll show you how to make a steering wheel compatible with Thrustmaster wheelbase. And by the way, sorry for no video last week, but I finally went for holidays and it was great. Okay, so in this video I will show you how to prepare the electronics for the wheel, and yes, there is going to be some soldering involved, but please don't let that put you off, because I included a small how to solder guide, and you'll see that it is really super easy to solder. Okay, so the parts you will need are an Arduino Nano version 3.0. And this is the one with the mini USB plug. The script that I'll be using, it's probably not compatible with the Pro Micro Arduino, so you need to get this version. Second thing is the PS2 connector. It's also sometimes called as 6-pin mini DIN. Yeah, PS2 is better. Yeah, so few cables. I would suggest the silicone wires, preferably in 5 different colors. That will be just easier. Then a bit of heat shrink to cover the wires, and optionally a pair of 5-pin JST connectors. These are not critical to build the whole thing, but trust me, it will make your life easier if you include it in the build. Now for the soldering, you'll need the following items: a soldering iron, something to clean it. I am using this brass wire cleaner, but you can also use like the yellow cleaning sponges that you find them quite often on eBay. A solder, so make sure also to use a very small diameter, because it's much more convenient when you are working with small electronics. I am using 0.4 millimeter with 2% flux and 63 to 37 ratio of whatever that is. Yeah, I would also suggest using a silicone pot of some sort, because it's heat resistant and you won't damage your desk. And finally, some blu-tack, just to hold wires, and it just makes it easier to work with the small bits. And one more thing, please don't buy some cheap crap soldering iron. It's a total waste of money and your nerves, believe me. I got this TS100 like 2 years ago or something. I really use it frequently and it's absolutely awesome. It never failed me really. It's just around 40 pounds or $50, something like that. And if you don't believe me, check the reviews online and you'll see that I'm not the only one that loves it. There's also a newer version. It's called TS80. It's a bit more expensive, but it has USB-C power input, so you can use it with your phone charger or power bank. So, you know, probably worth it. First, let's look at the generic diagram of what we'll be making. So we have the Arduino board connected to the PS2 plug with 5 wires and a JST connector in between them. You might be wondering what's the point of it, and the answer is very simple. So it's an ease of maintenance. If you need to troubleshoot the build, re-upload the code, check connections, etc., it allows you to quickly put it into the pieces without the need of unsoldering any cables. You could see how it is in practice in my spring paddle shifters video, where I simply plugged it into Arduino without any additional hassle. In this video I will be making everything from scratch, but you can also get a pre-made 5-pin JST cable. The problem is it might not have the individual colors for each wire, and therefore I decided not to use it. Next, let's quickly look at the connection diagram. As you can see, we'll be using only 5 out of the 6 pins in PS2 connector, and each links to a single pin on Arduino board. The colors on diagram are exactly the same as my cables, which just makes it much cleaner and minimizes the risk of making stupid mistakes like damaging the Arduino or even the wheelbase. Okay, so with that out of the way, we can start the build now. Okay, so we start from cutting 5 pieces of around 80 millimeters of the wire, and like I said before, it's best to use different wire colors. Next we need to remove a bit of insulation from the wire. I'm using a scalpel knife on the silicone pad. It's just the easiest way for me and the fastest. One by one. And now let's put a bit of solder on the wires, and you will notice that it kind of absorbs the solder, and that will make the soldering it later on much easier, so make sure you don't skip that step. The PS2 connector is made of few pieces, and you probably get it assembled like this, but we don't need all the parts. So first let's remove the cover. Then we have these 2 pieces of black plastic. We can remove them and get rid of them because they won't be needed. But what we have left right now is what we will use for the mod. So the metal covers and the pins inside themselves. So these are the pins that connect to the wheelbase, and on the other side is where we will be soldering in the wires. Before soldering, please make sure to clean up your soldering iron. It will just work much better and will be easier for you. Then I put a tiny bit of solder into the pins that I'll be connecting the wires to. Again, that will just make your life easier later on. So now I'm pushing the wire against the pre-soldered pin and just heat it up. So I don't need to add any extra solder right now. I just heat up the solder that's already on the wire and in the pin, and that just connects them. Yes, it doesn't look pretty at all. I mean, it looks terrible, but that's the thing. That's what I want to show you. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it sticks, it will work just fine. So it doesn't matter how good you are at soldering. The important thing is, it should work. That's the only outcome you need. Next step is to use the heat shrink just to cover the exposed wires. You need to cut 5 small pieces and then put them through the wires all the way to the end to cover the pin itself, the soldering point and the exposed wire. It just will prevent any shorting out or anything. Just make sure you do it. It's much safer this way. Okay, so let's put all 5. Okay, as you can see, everything is nicely covered with the heat shrink. Now let's just use a normal lighter and heat up the heat shrink so it sticks well and doesn't move. And it's done. Before we continue, it's better to cut all the wires to the same length. It will just work better with the JST connector. So now, again, we remove the insulation from the other end of the wires. When you get the JST connectors, you will have a female part, a male part, and some pins to hold the wires. So we will need to assemble that manually right now. Put the pin against one of the cables and just lock those two sets of small clips. I'm using just pliers, but you could use the right tools for the job. I just don't have it, so I'm dealing with it however I can. Yeah, so just carry on slowly. Okay, so that it locks in place the wire, and then just make sure the wire won't come out. I'm putting a tiny bit of solder on the exposed wire and the pin. It will just hold it in place. It's just safer this way. Now let's stick in all the pins inside the male part of the connector and make sure it goes all the way to the end. You can use something to push it through, and we do the same thing with all the 5 wires. Okay, so that's done. Part 1 is completed. We have the connector ready. Now let's try to put it into the adapter and see how it works. So put back the metal covers on the PS2 connector. It should slide in easily without any issues. And now we use the custom wheel adapter. First step is to remove the screws. And then we have these 2 small bits that will sandwich the connector in between them and just hold it in place. So you see we have these like mounting points inside, and they will match the black pins outside the PS2 connector. So you simply slide that in, and the other side as well, and that will be enough to keep the connector in place. So let's put it into the adapter right now. First of all, slide in the cable and try to fit the whole pin inside the hole. Make sure to align it the way it's shown on the video, because otherwise it just won't fit the wheelbase. Put back the screws and we're done. So as you can see, it fits very nicely, pretty stiff, so there should be no issues at all with it. Now we need another set of wires, this time roughly around 60 millimeters, again 5 pieces. Remove the insulation on both ends, but on one side just make the cut a bit longer, because it will be needed to connect to the JST connector. Clean the soldering iron before soldering and put a bit of solder on both ends of each wire. Same as before. So now we take the JST connector, put the male and female plugs together, and this is just for safety because the plastic these are made of can basically melt when soldering, so that will just keep the pins in place. As you can see, I'm putting a bit of solder on all the pins, same as before, just to make it easier to solder. And now put the longer cutout of the wire on the pin and just stick it in place with the soldering iron, and it holds nicely. Doing the same for the remaining cables. And we're done. So the final step is to put the heat shrink again, just to cover the wires, like so, and then just use the lighter, and we are done. All connects nicely, and obviously you need to make sure that the colored wires align on both sides of the connector. Now it's time to connect the wires to the Arduino board. If you have a new board, then soldering the wires is just that easy. Push through the wire through the hole and just put a tiny bit of solder on top of it. Now I have already been using this board before, so my pins are full of solder, which can be a bit problematic, but there's a very simple solution. Push the wire on one end and just heat up the solder with your soldering iron on the other side of the board, and it nicely slides through and it holds in place without any issues. So you can see, very quick and easy job. So here we have our connection diagram. So we had the black one to the ground, red wire to the 5V, yellow wire to pin D10, white to D12, and then we have blue wire connecting to pin D13. And that's all the connections to the board we need for now. And we are done. So all the wiring is ready for the testing. To load the code to Arduino, we first need to get the Arduino app. So let's head to arduino.cc website, go to the software downloads, and here you have a bunch of options for different operating systems. It's Windows, Linux, Mac, everything. I'm using the Windows 10 app. So I already have it on my PC, so I didn't download it here, but that's what I'll be using. Next, let's go to rr-m.org blog and click on the first post. Scroll to the very bottom and you have the code of version 1.01. After downloading it, open the zip file and double click on the INO file. That will open the Arduino app and display the code that is going to be uploaded to our board. Then go to Tools, select the board Arduino Nano, and check the ports. So these are the ports that we have active right now. Let's connect our board. And now you can see a new port appeared. It's COM11, so that means this is the port with my Arduino board connected to the PC. Hit the upload button, wait a few seconds, and you should get the message done uploading. And we are done, so we can start the testing right now. Right, so we have everything wired, now it's time to test it. I'm using this cheap prototyping board to connect this simple switch that I have in here. I didn't solder any cables yet, as I'll need to plan out the buttons layout for my wheel, and I'll do that in my next video. This is just to verify it's all working correctly. So this switch here has 2 pins on both ends. Doesn't matter whether we use these or these, they both work the same way. And basically I have one end connected to the ground on the board and the other to pin D7. First, let's connect it to the wheelbase. So as you can see, the power is on. Now let's open the game controllers on Windows and select the wheel and click Properties button. First thing you'll notice is that it's recognized as OpenWheel add-on, so that's a very good sign. Now let's push the button and it works. So you see this button number 6 highlights the moment I click the button on my board. So yeah, great, success then. That's it for now, for this video. In the next one, I will add a bunch of extra buttons and mount it into a wheel I bought from eBay. So definitely make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And as always, thanks a lot for watching and have a great rest of the day. Bye!